Why wool? We're here at Llandyfri Sheep Festival as part of the Textiles Technology Project within Coleg Sir Gar to find out what people's perceptions are on the use of wool and why we should or shouldn't use it. This research will then be fed back into the industry.
Ladies and gentlemen, both residents and visitors, good morning, bore da. Welcome to the Llandyfri Sheep Festival. This weekend provides an exciting new venture for our town. The droving heritage of Llandyfri has been celebrated in the past with drovers' festivals, but this year, under the patronage of His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, we are focusing on sheep and sheep products.
Prince Charles's campaign for wool is a 5-year project hoping to bring wool back into fashion and addresses the falling prices offered to farmers for fleeces. The annual decline in wool is thought to stem from the decline in sheep farmers, flock sizes and the introduction of easy care breeds that don't require shearing. Different sheep breeds produce varying qualities of fibre and every fleece has a use. It seems such a waste to be discarding this sustainable and natural resource. The Textiles Technologies Project will be trying to identify these issues, gather information and look at encouraging a better use of wool as a valued fibre on a local and national level. The project is also keen to introduce new technologies that are based within the research centres, which are Coleg Sir Gar and Swansea Metropolitan University, to new companies using wool in their manufacturing and product development processes. What do you use wool for? What does wool mean to you?
I love wool. I always use natural fibre in my work. I don't use any synthetics, and I use wool in lots of the stuff I make. And I tend, on the whole, not to buy any clothes that are not made of natural fibres because I think they help your body to breathe better, they feel good on you, and I just like them all.
Knitting all the time. Jumpers. At the moment I'm a grandmother, so I'm kept very busy making shawls and matinee jackets and booties, and my daughters now are into eco stuff, so it all has to be natural products and bamboo knitting needles and everything else. So yes, they're very keen on natural wool.
I use wool for knitted items and woven items. Ones I use for myself at home, obviously for interiors, blankets, rugs, throws. I knit and weave scarves and shawls, which I sell to. This one here is for the National Museum of Wales. I also do National Trust, and I have several shops that are taking my products.
All my socks are wool. I wouldn't wear anything else but woolen socks.
And why is that?
Because the difference in the feel when you put them on, to be perfectly honest. I've got hiking socks, and I've also got everyday socks, and they're all wool.
I make mattresses, so that's what we do day in, day out. So we use wool as a padding layer within our mattresses. So it adds comfort, it adds depth to the mattress, it helps it breathe. So in the winter you're going to be nice and warm, in the summer you're going to be nice and cool, and it's sustainable.
Because wool is a natural material, it breathes, it lasts, it actually colours better than synthetics. The colours are more subtle. You know, you can use lovely natural dyes on wool.
Well, I make toys along with my partner, and we actually felt wool. So we buy wool in the fibre form and we turn it into little creatures like this. This is solid wool, felted in one piece, so there's no stitching or seams or anything. So they're like little sculptures in wool.
Do you think there is enough information available to the general public on the use of wool?
No, to be honest, we've grown up in a society where we were so used to acrylics and nylons that we've gone away from the use of wool and what it is. And of course, wool's become so expensive.
I don't know. I mean, it's probably not really promoted very much, is it? So, you know, it's not something that is coming across it, you know. I mean, there's a little wool mark, isn't there? Whatever that is. I've forgotten, you know, the little sort of ball of wool, the stamp. Other than that, no, I haven't never seen anything else.
Over the last 20 to 30 years, it's been all the oil-based materials that have had most of the PR, most of the research development put into it. And I think natural fibres, wool especially, has been forgotten about.
Wel, mae yna wybodaeth dipyn o wybodaeth I gael, ond dwi'n meddwl hwnna ddigon. Dwi'n meddwl dyle fe fwy o wybodaeth gael I wneud. Yn yng ngwaith I bob dydd, wrth gwrs, dwi'n delio gyda glan, ac unwaith mae'r pobl yn dod I fewn drwy'r drws yn amgueddfa ni yn Rhyfach fel unre, maen nhw'n cael y wybodaeth yma. Ond wedyn, unwaith maen nhw'n gadael, dwi'n meddwl prin yw'r wybodaeth hynny. Ac mae eisiau falle bach fwy o addysg ar y bobl yma beth allan nhw'n neud y glan.
There are 9 million sheep after all in Wales and only 3 million inhabitants, so we've got 3 sheep for every single person. But I'm not sure that the general public as a whole realises the full extent of how wool can be used.
I don't think we advertise it enough now. If we go back 20 or 30 years, there was a big push to advertise British wool, and everybody was aware. I think now the advertising has gone.
We've forgotten why we use wool. I think we've forgotten that the old way of putting a baby down was in a little nest of wool. I think we've forgotten that when our grandfathers went up on the hills, and you hear all these stories about, oh, you know, these old boys, they used to go up on the hills, they'd just throw a sack over their shoulders, and it didn't matter what the weather was like, they'd go up, get the sheep, and they'd be back. None of this newfangled kit they've got today. But they could do that because they were wearing wool. And wool warms up as it gets wet and keeps you warm. We've forgotten all that, and you know, in less than a generation.
Do you think that wool is a contemporary material or is it more traditional and old-fashioned?
Well, both really. I mean, for many hundreds of years it's been a traditional fibre used in all sorts of things. Then man-made fibres came in and of course that rather displaced wool from the marketplace. So again, I think it's having a resurgence.
Wyllau bod yn hen ffasiwn traddodiadol wedi bod, ond yn ymal pryd mae'r ffasiwn yn cael gafel yn rhywbeth ac yma yn y cyhoedd, lle rhyw wraig, rhyw celebrity mawr yn gweithio'r peth yma, yn syth mae'r peth ar y farchnad a bobl yn moyn y peth, yna fe. So yn ymal mae'n ffordd mae eisiau coesrwydd er mwyn ehangu'r farchnad.
Well, I think it's very contemporary now because, I mean, when I was young, I was always knitting in wool, and I think people have got very bored with all the acrylics, and we've gone back to natural stuff, so I think it's very contemporary, lovely modern colours that we never had when I was knitting. So no, I'd say it's very contemporary at the moment.
I mean, like for example, John Smedley shirts is what I'm talking about, and the factory there down in Matlock. I've been around there, and it's wonderful. You know, they're absolutely beautiful. You know, kind of, yeah, very, very contemporary.
I think there is a turn in the wheel, and young people are becoming more and more aware of global issues, sustainability, and things. So yes, it is, but it's got a long way to go.
Okay, I suppose the on the face value answer to that is it's traditional and old-fashioned, but then contemporary is what you do with it. We make wool mattresses now, and people go, wow, what a great idea. Well, my grandmother's grandmother slept on a wool mattress, but between then and now, no one else has. So all we're doing is taking something that is traditional and old-fashioned, if you like, reinventing it, giving it a modern twist, and making it obviously a better product, and pushing it forward. So the same thing can happen in clothing, same thing can happen in carpets or every other use for wool.
Can you think of any other uses for wool?
Well, as an engineer, and I've studied energy engineering, I'm aware of wool as being a superb insulating material. So that could be used much more than it is now. We're using artificial materials, oil-based materials at the moment for insulation, glass wool, etc., and mineral wool. But what better to use? We've got sheep and wool fleeces, which are hardly getting any money at all because they're deemed worthless.
let's put them in wall cavities and make insulation products from them.
Odi, ond mae rhaid I ni ddweud, mae yna bobl nawr wrth gwrs sydd yn cyflwyno wlan mewn ffordd wahanol ac mae eisiau hybu hynny ac insuleidio'r tŷ enghraifft. Un peth arall sydd yn cael ei wneud nawr, mae eisiau hwnnw, a pe bydden ni'n cael ein ffordd, bydden ni'n cael y bobl yma sydd yn adeiladu tai newydd I sicrhau unrhyw beth ar ôl 2010 bod rhaid I chi insuleiddio'r tŷ gyda ffibr naturiol.
What is your overall opinion about the British and Welsh wool industry?
It is very difficult to trace like British or a specific Welsh wool because when I came over here 7 years ago, we tried to use Welsh wool for our products. We produce a little toy and we need very fine wool and you couldn't trace it. It just ended up somewhere in a big woolen board company and they couldn't trace it. They made drugs from it or something rough. So it wasn't any good for us, and even so if we would like to trace it, we couldn't. So we buy it in.
Well, unfortunately, the sheep that we produce in Wales, because of the height of the terrain, are not very good for woolen products because most of the wool goes for carpets. But if we could introduce better, finer wool into our flocks and cross it in some way, then I think that would be a tremendous advantage.
Were you disappointed by the fact that you couldn't get hold of any local wool?
Oh yeah, because you get always these little jokes, how many sheep per person live in Wales and so, and lots of sheep, but you can't get hold of wool, which is a little bit ironic.
The problem is when people talk about not being able to buy Welsh wool, very often what they're talking about is not being able to buy small quantities of wool. The system isn't set up to sell small quantities of wool. So, you know, we buy tons at a time. I've just bought 50 tons of Welsh wool. If I wanted to buy a ton, it would be difficult.
Wool fleeces are selling for almost nothing. It costs more to shear the sheep than it does in recovering the fleece cost. So I'm really not at all certain why wool has been overlooked.
It's dominated by high street chains which don't produce good quality, hard-wearing goods. They're very low-grade, cheap imports. And when you try to find good quality or you think you can spend more money on something, you find quite often that it isn't as good quality as you know it should be.
We've been losing a traditional manufacturing base in the UK, but we've also been losing the way that people use wool. Wool carpets are great, but wool carpets that are made in the UK tend to be expensive, lovely quality, last a long time, and it doesn't suit a lot of people's lifestyle, which is they move quite frequently because of work. So we've lost that, if you like, traditional base in the industry.
And is the wool that you source, is it Welsh?
It is. It's Welsh and it's organic. Last year, I think there was about 90 tonnes of Welsh organic wool put into the auctions, and we use 70 tonnes of that. And this year we aim to use the 90 tonnes or more.
I tried to buy Welsh wool recently to make a triangular shawl, and I went to Lampeter and I couldn't get what I wanted there because there had been a mill and it had closed down. And I come here today and I see there is a great variety, but I don't know how to go and buy it. You know, in shops, you get your Serda, you get your Rowan, you get imported wools as well.
I have some sheep of my own. I source from several flocks locally, but I also have other natural fibre producing animals myself, so I mix and I quite often blend my wool with things like alpaca or silk, so I tend to use blends a lot. And I try to source from locally as much as I can.
What do you consider one of the challenges that are facing the wool industry now and in the next 5 years?
Because farmers, organic farmers even, don't see a value in the wool, they don't put it in green bags, so it never goes to market as organic wool. And the consequence for us as a business may well be that next year I won't be able to say that all my wool is Welsh. Now I think that's a terrible shame, and it's something, you know, that I'm trying to take up with farmers wherever I go.
Wel, mae rhaid I ni beido mynd nôl i'r gorffennol ormod. Mae yna duedd I ni wneud hynny a meddwl bellach bod gwlan ddim yn bwysig bellach. Falle dwi mor bwysig I mae wedi bod, ond mae yna gyfle I ni falle I edrych mewn a gweithio ar y gwlan yma oherwydd mae yn ffeiber arbennig y gorau am gadw chi'n gynnes. Dyw ddim yn un sydd yn llosgi yn rhwydd iawn, felly mae'n tico nifer o'r blychau. Felly, a mae hefyd, mae eisiau ni wneud mwy sexy na mae nawr.
You know, Marks and Spencer's only buy wool from abroad. They don't buy any British wool at all. That's not good enough. It's not good enough. So, you know, a company like mine trying to get products into some of those big companies. John Lewis sells their stuff, but for Marks and Spencer doesn't quite fit the bill.
Fi'n credu bod y diwydiant glân yn Bryden wedi colli ffordd yn yr blynyddoedd diwetha, yn wedig i'r ochr y ffermwyr, yn wedig fel mae'r pris beth mae'r ffarmwr yn cael am y cynnyrch, a I weld wedyn cynnyrch yma yn y siopau, a'r pris sy'n cael ei ofyn am, mae tipyn o waniaeth rhwng y masnachwr sy'n werthu fe a'r un sy'n baratoi e. So felly mae rhyw tipyn o waniaeth yr arian mewn ffordd ble mae'r ffarmwr yn cael am ei wlan ac yna ble mae'r cynnyrch yma'n cyrraedd y siop. A rwy'n credu bod eisiau felly siopau I ostwng y prisiau chydig bach, felly a'r ffarmwr cael ychydig bach fwy am y wlan.
I think to make a profit from the ground up, I think that's the major problem. Because the farmers aren't getting any money for their wool, and sometimes they're throwing it away if it's inferior quality. And I think if you do the sort of work that I do, you can't really command the amount of money to make it pay well. So it's very difficult actually to make enough money to use purely wool in your work.
Felly yn ystod y blynyddoedd diwetha yn y byd, felly'r diwydiant, felly'r ffasiwn neu rhywbeth fel ni, felly dyw'r gwlan ddim wedi cael y cyfle I fod allan yna, a mae'r fibres waniaeth yma, ond fi'n credu yn y flwyddyn diwetha, mae'r gwlan I weld yn cael ychydig bach fwy o cywsrwydd mewn ffordd, so gan gobeithio felly daw y diwydiant yn ôl.
But the problem, the biggest problem for wool, and that's, you know, it's been very interesting being part of what's going on here. The biggest problem is that people are turning it into a craft. They're using small amounts of wool from their own farms, or maybe from 2 or 3 neighbouring farms, and it's becoming a craft. If we're going to use the wool that we produce, it's got to be part of a proper manufacturing base. Not a craft.
For it to be profitable
for it to be profitable for everybody. Yeah, for everybody.
What are your views on the festival this weekend?
Well, I think it's really great because it just means that more people get to see things that are made from wool. It gives them the chance to see how versatile wool is. I mean, it comes from a lovely little animal to start with, and you don't have to kill the animal either to have the wool. And so it's just a lovely material that we all can use, and it's here. There's so much of it in Wales. It'd be really great if we could use it in our products.
Yn sicr, mae yna rhywbeth at dast pawb yma, yr cyfoes a'r traddodiadol, a mae yna le'r ddau ohonyn nhw wrth gwrs. Ond mae rhaid I ni edrych i'r dyfodol, mae Cymru yn wlad fynyddig, mae yna digon o ddefed gyda ni, ac mae eisiau ni wneud y gorau hynny, ac mae lle mae heddi yn dangos hynny.
Well, I think it's very exciting. It's a focus on wool, which is great. Hopefully it'll be an annual event. This is the first one, and it seems to be incredibly successful so far. and it's all tied up with the accent on wool and Prince Charles trying to promote wool and so on, which is fantastic. Let's hope something comes of it.
Mae cywsrwydd yn y peth mawr a mae hyfryd i weld fel penwythnos fel yma yn Llandyfri, ble mae'r ŵyl wlân yma a ble mae'r cyhoedd yn dod yma, mae'r cyfle i ni, felly fel diwydiant ni, fel ffermwyr a bobl eraill sy'n mae lan i ni nawr i ddangos y bobl yma beth ni'n gallu gynnig nhw a nhw gobeithio ar ôl fod yr ŵyl yma bod nhw chydig bach fwy o wybodaeth am y byd y ddefed a byd o glan.
I think it's wonderful for Llandyfri. I think the Prince's campaign for wool it's been a huge boost for the wool industry. And this is such a traditional area for sheep farming. I was brought up in Llandermoen, just up the valley from here. You know, sheep farmers were the people that shaped the land. They're the people that have made our landscape look the way it has. If we want to carry on having those sorts of landscapes that people can enjoy, we need our sheep farmers. We're duty bound, all of us who have come to love wool. We're duty bound. That part of what we do is educational, that we talk to people about how fantastic a textile it is and the properties it has, which are wonderful.
The Textiles Technology Project is interested in hearing views about wool production and its use as a fibre. We want to engage with industry and designers in Wales and bring together the opinions, concerns and issues of this sector. Through the project, we can introduce new technologies available in the centre and raise awareness of this valuable product. For further information about the project or any queries, please log on to ttpwales.co.uk or join us on Facebook.